Thanks, Jana. The impacts of MGM Springfield on the city's Hispanic community discussed at the Massachusetts Gaming Commission meeting today. A survey was shared based on impressions before and after the casino opened its doors. Western Mass News reporter Daniel Santiago is getting answers on the results.
A rare look at MGM Springfield's impact on the city's Hispanic community in research shared with the Massachusetts Gaming Commission on Thursday. Zulmali Rivera with the nonprofit Neighbor to Neighbor was the principal investigator of the study. She tells Western Mass News this collaboration with the Gaming Commission is only the first step in bettering the lives of Springfield's Hispanic and Latinx people.
There's very little research nationally, like you could barely look up information about the impacts of a casino in a particular neighborhood. And so, especially the Latino Hispanic community. And so we wanted to, get that data out there so that it can be used just for education and informative purposes.
Some of the issues in the study focused on housing costs, job opportunities, and crime, with perceptions shared during the meeting.
While some residents feel more secure due to the increase in foot traffic and the police presence, and others still remain very concerned about the potential crime in the area and the influx of outsiders due to the neighborhood.
And while the results show some people believe things have improved since the casino first opened, Rivera tells us housing issues impacting this community have only gotten worse.
When the casino came down, there was a huge increase in people's taxes, and it continues to go up every year. And, that's the biggest concern, because as you have a lot of homeowners who are in their 40s and up, and younger ones who don't understand why their taxes went up.
Western Mass News reached out to the Puerto Rican Cultural Center, an organization that works with MGM Springfield to serve Hispanic population in Springfield. And they tell us in a statement, in part, MGM is a valued partner, and we're working in collaboration to better serve our community and ensure that progress and safety is a priority. We also reached out to the MGM Springfield to learn their perspective on this study, but have yet to hear back. Rivera is hoping that as a result from this study, the MGM Casino and the City of Springfield can partner up with local nonprofits to work on solutions like creating a plan that tackles housing issues and providing more resources to the communities. Reporting in Springfield, Daniel Santiago, Western Mass News.